Morning. To celebrate Adult Education and Literacy Week, we'd like to welcome you to WIOA, How It Should and Will Impact Your Classroom Instruction. Our presenters today are Jamil Steele, Senior Director of Adult Education at ICCB, Sarah Goldammer, and myself from Southern Illinois Professional Development Center. Before we start, just a few things. You will all be muted, and if you have a question, please raise your hand. There's a button there, or you type in your question in the chat box. We will also be taking questions at the end of the presentation. Another thing is that this webinar will be recorded and available tomorrow on iLearn and the ICSPS website as an archived webinar. You can then print out the slides from today's presentation once the webinar has been posted. In today's webinar, we will be talking about the following. What is the WIOA and instructional implications under WIOA? Now I'd like to turn it over to Jamil.
Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. How are you doing? Welcome to our webinar. We're excited to present this material to you. The title of the purpose of this webinar is to basically bring WIOA, that's the Workforce Innovation Act, down to an instructional level and talk about the purpose of WIOA, discuss the core elements, outcome measures, and also how WIOA will be good for your students. Next slide, please. Well, let's start with the definition. The Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act was signed by President Barack Obama in 2014, and the purpose of this particular act was to integrate workforce and education and economic development services to better serve our students, or as the law requires or refers to as the client. This is a human-centered design. Basically, purpose is to centralize and systematize instructional services as well as workforce development and workforce preparation to meet the needs of the students who have barriers to employment, education, training, and also support, and integrates education and training and also support services to succeed in the labor market. Next slide, please. Let's talk about the core elements of WIOA. Through the WIOA partnerships, there are 4 required partners and 24 required partners throughout the state. We developed a unified state plan to integrate services throughout our agencies to better meet the students' needs. These integrated services comprise of adult literacy services, workforce preparation, and occupation training. The whole goal of the WIOA movement is to prepare our students for college and career readiness. To do that, basically, we have to have high quality instruction that is aligned with the college and career readiness standards. That's why we're insisting this year that all instructors go through our standards-based training, because the end game is now under WIOA to prepare not only our students for a high school equivalency, but to prepare them for life beyond the high school equivalency. Once a student enters into our adult education program, upon exit, they will be college and career ready, so that way they can transfer into post-secondary education, job training, or employment. The outcomes that WIOA is designed to produce is, like I said before, is to generate what we consider to be college and career ready students. We want to prepare our students for life beyond a high school equivalency certificate. High school equivalency certificates are still being counted in our programs. We are still taking into account measurable skill gain, educational functioning levels. We want our students to progress through our instruction especially after we pre-test them at a certain level, and after 40 hours of instruction, we can do a post-test. We want to ensure that our students are navigating through our systems and achieving educational functioning level and measurable skill gains. But also, too, we want to make sure that they receive their high school credential, as well as being able to transition into post-secondary education, employment, and job training. Okay, next, please. Now, how is WIOA good for your students? Point number one, students will have access to multiple on-ramps to further their education and careers. We know that today's adult learner has multiple barriers that prevent them from participating in education full-time. So that way, what we want to do is to have program design that is flexible and customizable and able to meet the needs of the student. Two, students will receive wraparound coordinated support services from state agencies. We want to do a better job of streamlining our support services through WIOA partnerships. You know, one of the biggest barriers for students completing are factors that disallow students to persevere or they cause them to drop out is external factors. So these complete wraparound services, if we secure partnerships with our WIOA core partners and required partners, will enable our students to have more support to finish our program and basically exit to transition into post-secondary education, employment, or job training. Number three, students will have a skill set to obtain post-secondary education. Like I said in an earlier slide, the game has changed. Now we are not just focusing on getting our students to get a high school equivalency, but we also want them to have the skills, the math levels, the reading levels, the language arts levels necessary to enter into a post-secondary education environment. Fourth, students will possess the essential skills to be work-ready. We're asking that adult education programs also integrate what we call essential employability skills into your curriculum and into your classroom and program design. In other words, we're going to teach our students to show up on time, to have a great work ethic. Those are things that we can actually do in the classroom to help them prepare for life in college as well as in employment. Fifth, students will obtain employment in the in-demand career pathway in emerging industries. Program design, WIOA requires programs now to work on their local workforce boards to find out what the industry sectors are. In other words, who's hiring in your local region and what fields have promising emerging wages. So that way when students exit our program and they go through a job training program, they not only enter into employment, but they enter into a sector that promises them advancement as well as a living wage.
Bill, we have a question.
Sure.
Someone wants to know how you would define on-ramps.
On-ramp is basically a door. We need multiple doors for students to enter into our adult education program. We know that there's not a one-size-fits-all situation. Our students have multiple classifications. Some of them are comes in when you do the TABE test, they come in between the 6th and 8th grade level, or I'll say 0 to 6th grade level. We want to have programming on-ramping for those who are basic low-skill literacy, as well as those who are tested in the ASE range. So giving them multiple opportunities to meet their life situations as well as their career goals, that's our objective.
Okay. Let's look at how WIOA defines adult education and literacy activities. In the law, it actually says that programs and activities and services include adult education, literacy, workplace adult education and literacy activities, family literacy activities, English language acquisition activities, integrated English literacy and civics education, workforce preparation activities, or integrated education and training. Now, we wanted to give you the definition of that, as well as let's see how workforce preparation activities are defined in WIOA. They include activities, programs, or services that are designed to help an individual acquire a combination of both, not just academic skills, but a combination of academic skills, basic academic skills, critical thinking skills, digital literacy skills, and self-management skills. Jamil kind of referred to employability skills, the ability to understand systems, to use resources, to use information, to work with others, and obtain skills that are needed for a successful transition into and completion of post-secondary education or training or employment.
So we're going to make hopefully a successful transition at this point into what are the implications in the classroom. But before we go on to that next section, does anybody have any questions or any clarifications of what Jamil and Bevan have shared so far about WIOA and the law itself? Let me give you just a second to think if there's any questions that you want to ask. Okay, we're moving on then. So what are the implications for instruction at our programs? How does this impact our teachers, our programs, our students? And number one, and I'm going to go through these sort of quickly because then we're going to flesh them out and talk about them a little bit more. Technology use skills. How do our students make sure that they're ready for employment? What types of technology skills do they need? Employability skills. And employability skills, Bevan's going to talk about that in a little bit, but that might be what you traditionally have thought of in the past as soft skills. What are those skills that are going to make them not only be a good employee, but the employee that gets promoted and moves along, and the employee that doesn't get fired. Contextualized curriculum for basic skills, language acquisition, and industry specific. So we'll flesh that out a little bit because we want to make sure that we're contextualizing instruction at all levels and for all students. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Integrated instruction, those IET programs, and we'll talk about what's the difference between a contextualized curriculum and an integrated instruction. And what are the implications for all levels? And the reason that all is emphasized is because we want to make sure that our teachers and our programs understand that there's a part for everyone. It's not just the bridge program, it's not just the IET program, but every single bit of instruction needs to be impacted so that we make sure that we're helping our students get that skill set for the workforce, for that transition, for post-secondary, as Jamil had on a couple slides. What is that skill set? And we need to be helping them work towards that skill set every day, every class period. And everyone should teach concurrently and contextually with workforce preparation activities. So just in case anybody's going, wow, that's a lot, we want to talk for the next maybe 20, 30 minutes about what kind of resources are out there, because there's a ton of them, for our teachers, for if you're sitting there and you're a director, what can you share with your teachers? But I am going to warn you at this point, a warning and not really a warning, but just this is a call to meeting, because I'm going to ask you to share what you're doing in your program. I'm hoping to make this a little bit more interactive. So if you're doing something in your program or you have teachers that are doing some great things, please be ready to share. Even though you're muted at this point, we can unmute you. So let's move ahead and take a look at each of those. And technology skills. My question for you is, who at their program is currently teaching technology skills to their students in their classroom? Does anybody have any to use those skills? Not only just what those skills are, but actual use of technology. Anybody have, if you can put it in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand and talk, I'd love to hear what's happening out there. This is the point where we call on Bueller. Hopefully you're typing. You know, so I will just mention and give people a chance to type something of what kind of technology. If you've been around long enough, you know that there was a time when people kind of thought that technology would move along and we didn't really have to teach all that. And I think there was a time whenever people thought that transitioning and integrated instruction would maybe have its day and then move along. And now we found out that, you know, there's just no separation between technology and daily living anymore. Even now, as I'm asking you to type something or ask you to raise your hand, that's technologies. Okay, let's see. We've got some nice information. Thank you to everybody. And Amber, at Elgin Community College, we use the technology standards integrated into our LA and math classes, language arts and math classes. It's required for use at all, for us at all levels. And Rhonda is saying that, okay, Rhonda, I'm glad you're back in listening mode. Rhonda had it, I'm just going to share because this is partly our sign of our times too. I think they had an active shooter, not an active shooter drill. That's important that I put that last word on there so nobody, you know, gets too concerned. So Esther shares that all classes use computers and or laptops. Emily, a digital lab class at the Chinese Mutual Aid Association. We also have laptops, iPads, and Kat is telling us that they have regular digital literacy classes for our trainees during our Friday workshop. Kat also says Accenture curriculum. And Dawn, all staff members are trained and expected to use technology. We have a computer lab and 4 computers in each classroom. All staff are trained in technology. Okay, so here's my question for you. Thank you for sharing all that, and that's marvelous. But moving on and thinking about the WIOA, also thinking about making sure that it's contextualized with workforce preparation activities. So that's my second question is, not only how are you teaching them how to use technology, but how are you teaching them how technology might be used in the workforce? So while you're thinking about that and typing some other answers or raising your hand, Jeff shares that down at SWIC they integrate technology skills to get students started with IDES CIS program, which allows them to conduct career searches, future employment statistics, and the students then continue to work with technology through their coursework that they use. And then Pamela says she uses Kahoot and Quizlet as a test preparation tool. Very good. Anybody else have anything specifically that they're doing for contextualized for the workforce preparation activities? And as you're typing those, let me just mention, because if you're thinking, oh my goodness, now we need a whole nother curriculum, what do we need to do that? I want to encourage, and we have a lot of resources that helps teachers make this shift, is as they're teaching what you're already teaching, all of those items that you popped in addition to that is making that explanation, talking with students about the why. Why are you teaching it? Yes, you need those things for daily living, but you also want to make sure that they understand that most jobs are going to need some type of technology, whether it is, and Bevan's going to talk a little bit about more of this, but for searches and those kinds of things for jobs, but also making them aware of being suspect of what you read. That's contextualizing, is teaching them that as an employee, it's very important to understand and have accurate information and have application of that information. Making sure that they understand social media, that you don't just put something out there, that people read what you put and can make a decision about you. Those are all ways that you can contextualize. Whether they're going to be a CNC operator, they're going to need some technology skills. If they're going to be a CNA, now when I go to my doctor's office, the first person that screens me, they're putting information into a computer, the doctor's reading that. There are so many applications. So I would encourage you, whether you're in a classroom or have teachers that you are influencing, is making sure that they ask their students where they see technology in the world of work. How's it being used? How could it go awry? But just being aware. Okay, let me see if I've got any other suggestions as I was talking. So Rhonda is talking about their students creating cover letters and resumes. So that's contextualizing for the career search, definitely, and that's important. And Kat says, lessons on finding the right job and avoiding scams. Man, that's our world we live in now, right? Is being concerned about, is this actually real or is it a scam? Paying attention to their online presence, using Google Apps, Maps to Drive to help them on their job search. Thank you. Amber says we integrate career awareness lessons into every class. She's a language arts teacher. They show students how to turn their current skills into appropriate job resume sentences. And Kat also says mynextmove.org for career exploration. And Dawn says Adaptive Women Employ Career Foundations into 6 lessons, including technology skills. Student completes the 6 lessons each semester. So lots of great integration that's already going on. And then I think I missed a couple up here on top. Again, resumes, jobs. Lisa says job searches, online applications, Quizlet. Checking, oh, Emily, thank you. Checking pay stubs, clocking in and out, applications, online PD, emails. So lots of great suggestions. Thank you for everybody putting that in. So you can see that there's tons of ways that you're already implementing technology use skills. I would challenge you to go back and say, what else? What can we add in? What's one more way that we can have technology? And how are you going to add it in? Well, here's some resources for teaching technology use. And we gave you some links in here, and as we mentioned, this PowerPoint will be up as a archived webinar, and we also, if anybody wants me to send it to them, and then we'll also have it posted. So there's lots of different ways that you can get it, and we'll have our contact information at the end. So there is the Advisory Council Technology Checklist for students for all levels, basic, intermediate, and advanced levels. So that gives teachers an idea of what do my students need to know. So it actually is something they can check off and says, yes, we've gone through this and we've talked about this. On the iLearn, there are several modules with resources, with information. One's teaching and using technology in the ABE, ASE, ESL classroom. There's several resources with that. Technology ideas for special learning needs, and I will tell you that that session's great for special learning needs, but it can be used for all of your students. There's a Technology 101, and that Technology 101 is a whole bunch of small little modules that are clickable, that if you want to use that in the classroom to show students how to use a piece of technology from, you know, very, very basic and kind of moves up, that's a great tool for you. Smartphone apps for education, and some of you mentioned some apps that you're already using in your responses. And then learning techniques to improve technology use in the classroom. And all of these are available for your professional development PD requirements from ICCB, and they're all available on demand at any time. You can use them for professional development days, and your teachers can do them individually as well. Okay, so moving on.
As Jamil noted earlier in how WIOA is good for your students, he said students will possess essential skills to be work ready. Well, instruction and employability skills is how you can ensure that your students are work ready. Employability skills, before we ask some questions, I'm going to ask you who's currently teaching employability skills to their students in their classroom, and what are you doing in a classroom to teach employability skills. But before we go into that, and while you're typing that, you can listen to this. Employability skills actually covers a wide gamut of skill sets that we need to be thinking about when we're actually working with our students and teaching employability skills. As personal skills, as to just being able to show up on time management, those kinds of things, showing up to work on time, being able to, while you're there, not talking on your phone, your personal dress and hygiene. Then interpersonal skills, how to get along with your coworkers, how to get along with your supervisors, those kinds of things. And communication. Do you need to be able to, who do you need to talk to? HR department, those kinds of things, how to communicate via emails or via personal conversations, and what needs to be discussed during those conversations. And then it also covers things that are much broader, such as understanding the systems. How does the places where you're going to be working, how does their power flow? Do you go to an immediate supervisor, or do you jump to the boss? Because there are times that you don't want to jump over someone's head, so you have to understand how the systems work. There's a large number of employability skills that we need to cover. So I know that someone said that they indicated that they were using career awareness in their classrooms, but what other, how are you currently teaching employability skills to students in your classrooms? And I'll give you just a moment to enter that in. Okay, in math, someone said, in math,
hold on, our technology is moving on us. Give us a second.
In math instruction, we are integrating the math practices which directly relate to problem-solving skills in the workplace. That is very good, Amber. And then Melissa says, our instructors and advisors are teaching employability skills. We use the WorkWise series as well as the consumer education modules on iPathways. We also have other resources for our students to use. I think that's kind of a neat way to combine technology skills with using iPathways with the employability skills. Sue says, creating a web page to instruction use. Take the digital literacy challenge, 4 mini courses, and creating online surveys and quizzes to enhance digital learning instruction, digital literacy instruction. Okay, so as Sarah asked you earlier, we know that we're using things to do and teach employability skills in our classrooms, but how can we teach that and broaden it to include employability skills? So what if you take a current topic you're teaching, such as someone said math, that they're already using that in math. So if you're going to be teaching math, how can you include employability skills in math? And I think that Amber actually said that with them with using math practices. How could you teach language arts and incorporate employability skills in language arts? How could you teach across the curriculum kind of thing in a certain topic and broaden it to include employability skills? I'll give you just a moment to type in some things.
While you're typing, I just want to go back up because there were some items that came in as we were transitioning into the employability skills, but back on the digital literacy. Sue Borowski from the ALRC was saying that they also have technology iLearns available. So that's another opportunity, another resource that you have, and that's to using technology to support instruction. And then Emily also said, and I love this idea, Emily Tolsman said they have regular teacher roundtables where they share best practices. Each practice we need to identify the lesson activity and that it has employability skills integrated into it. So I think that's a marvelous idea to share, and I want to put a plug in again as people are typing and giving Bevan some more answers. And I'm going to tell you about another resource where there's best practices. So if you're doing something in your program that seems to be working, anything to do with team teaching, transitioning, employability skills, all of those things, I would love to hear about it because I'd love to share it on the ICAP's website so that everybody in the state can benefit. So if you have anything at all, at the end, this is Sarah, I'm going to give you my email address, and please send it.
So Rhonda, I was reading what you wrote about teaching students to engage in small talk at work. Excuse me. What is appropriate to talk about and what is not. And that's a great way to include in teaching language acquisition skills, teaching them how to engage in that small talk at work and what is appropriate and what's not to talk about. Amber, you said in language arts instruction you practice responding to work emails before and during employment, and that's really a good thing to note. So we're going to go on, and there are some, like technology skills, there are some employability skills resources that are available for you to actually help you in your instruction. There are several iLearn modules that are geared toward using, one is the Octane Employability Skills Framework Overview. This actually spells out and lists thoroughly all of the employability skills and things that you can look at to see that you're covering in your instruction. Integrating Career Awareness is also available, and Career Ready Practices, which are things that employers are looking for that your students need to have, skills that they need to have in order to be good employees. critical thinking and problem solving, communication. There's a workplace systems and culture module, and then how to keep your job. Because our students oftentimes get a job and then all of a sudden they're unemployed because they didn't understand, why is it that I lost my job? Because, you know, I was just 10 minutes late for work, or I did talk inappropriately at work, and so it's how to keep your job. Another good resource is the Illinois Essential Employability Skills Framework and Self-Assessment. You can kind of use the self-assessment to actually look through and see what types of employability skills in your instruction, what you're doing, and it's available at that website. The Employability Skills Resource Toolkit from North Carolina is a great resource. It is, if you print it out, I'm just going to warn you ahead of time, it's about 5 or 6 inches thick.
515 pages.
Yeah, and so but it actually has some great lessons and ways to incorporate employability skills into what you're doing in your classrooms. So we wanted to give you that resource as well.
Let me just dovetail on to Bevan talking about that employability skills resource toolkit. She said if you print it all out, you can print out one lesson. You cannot, you know, they are downloadable in Word, so you can change them, which teachers love that, or you can take them as PDFs and you can use their worksheets and that kind of thing. They also have a bunch of PowerPoints those are actually resources to take right into the classroom and use with students. So that's a beautiful thing. Okay. Any other comments or questions about employability skills before we move on to the next topic, which is contextualize their... Okay, we're moving on then. Contextualized curriculum for basic skills, language acquisition, and industry specific. So I know that everybody's aware of, well, I'm hoping that everybody's aware that there are specific contextualized curriculum for industry, whether you're having a bridge program in a particular specific industry. But hopefully people also are contextualizing curriculum for basic skills instruction and for language acquisition. So that's my next question is, who's currently teaching contextually in their classroom? So you can tell about something that is foundationally a contextualized curriculum like a bridge program, or what are you doing in your classroom to make sure that you're contextualizing every day? And then I'd also like to know, like, where did you get your curriculum from, or what lessons you're using? Some of you have already referenced different resources that you have. And the last question we're going to talk about is basically, if you're not using a specific contextualized curriculum, if you're using whatever curriculum you are currently using, you don't have to throw that out. You don't have to, but it's like, how can we ramp it up? How can we do better for our students to make sure that we get them, as Jamil said, that we help them to get to where they need to go? So my last question on contextualized curriculum is going to be, how can you take something you're already teaching and broaden it to make sure that you contextualize to careers? Okay, we've got some things coming up. I talked long enough that there was some typing. Okay, so Laura Sherwood from ALRC mentioned the iLearn module. There's another iLearn module that's for teachers in creating web pages, so that's available for you. And Rhonda Seraphin said they're using the state manufacturing and healthcare curriculum in our bridge classes. And just in case there is someone on here who's not aware that there are contextualized curricula that's available for use, I'm going to give you that resource in the next slide, so don't freak out, it's coming. So you might be using that. Anybody think that they're doing something that they'd love to share, because we'd love to hear it, where you're teaching maybe what we would have called a contextualized class in the past. Now we know that all classes should be contextualized. All instruction needs to be contextualized. But that's a newer concept. Anybody have something to share that they are doing? Or did you just have a brain inspiration like, oh, I'm teaching this and here's how I could contextualize it? As people are typing and putting all those great ideas down, I'm going to mention just a couple because, again, there are specific curricula that are available. The other thing is, if you're not aware, different programs across the state have come up with their own depending on their bridge program. So you don't, the good news for all of us in Illinois is nobody should start from square one. You know, if there's 100 squares, everybody should be jumping to like square 50 and starting there, because there's so many resources. And again, we are happy to help you, to connect you to who's doing what amongst the state. I mentioned the ICAP's website, which we'll come to when we talk about integrated education and training. And on that, it tells you what different programs are doing throughout the state, what type, what content, what industry specific training they're doing. So there's lots of resources for you. Also, I want to make sure that you know that there is a contextualized basic skills curriculum that's available. Okay, so Rhonda also says, when you say contextualized, do you actually mean contextualized to the workplace career pathways? Very good question, Rhonda. Thanks for asking that. And I'm going to talk about in just a minute the difference between contextualized instruction and integrated instruction, because there is a difference, so I want to make sure that I share that with you. And so I'm going to tell you that I'm kind of using it. I'm glad that you asked that, Rhonda. I'm using it in two broad senses. One is very industry specific, a specific curriculum that is for manufacturing, a specific curriculum that is for healthcare. But then when I ask what you're teaching and how could you broaden, it is then I'm using it a little bit more a looser definition, because if our students need to have their horizons broadened every single day into the world of work. And if you were fortunate enough to grow up in a home where your parents or guardians or grandparents or whomever talk to you every day about, you know, Bevan said about the saying something you're not supposed to at work, and how did that work out for you? So maybe something happened at school, and your parents or your guardians might have talked to you about how does that play in the world. My parents called that the real world, but you know, when you're a kid, you're still in the real world. So it's broadening their horizons about what works and what is acceptable in the world of work. And then also talking about, so for instance, I'm teaching ratios and percentages. Keep teaching ratios and percentages like you've always been, but then add in 2 minutes into your instruction saying, what kind of jobs would people use ratios and percentages? And your students may not be able to answer that on day one, but that gives you an opportunity to use your technology, digital literacy skills, and go do some research and find out. And then find out what your program offers and what kinds of opportunities they have. So it could be contextualizing to whatever the content area is, the academic content area for that day, but also then the world of work and what the expectations are. And then ratios and percentages, how would you use that in your daily life, going through that. And the cool thing is, the teachers that I know that are doing this is, at first they have to give a lot of foundational information to their students. However, the more that you talk about it, there's going to be somebody who remembers, that not everybody, but somebody who's going to remember the next day and go, oh yeah, we talked about this, and oh yeah, here's another place that it could happen. And then that maybe opens up additional speakers and instruction that you could have somebody come in and talk about, or have somebody, even if it's not an integrated program, have somebody, if you know somebody who's teaching a welding class, have them come over and talk about, this is the way that we use percentages. This is how measurement is very, very important, that type of thing. In writing, you might be talking about doing some research, but then as you help your students evaluate their resources for accuracy and validity and all of those types of things that we've always been teaching, now we talk about, for just a little bit, let's have a conversation about how that's really important in the world of work also. Obviously, if you're working in the healthcare field, you better have a very accurate writing of what's happened in this incident report. So that would be writing in the world of work. Or if your boss is asking you to find some information, you better be accurate. And if you got your information from the National Enquirer or some bogus online, doesn't seem very valid, so how do you know if your information is real and right? Okay, so I'm going to see, I don't think anybody else wrote anything else, so let's move on and make sure you know what some of the resources are for contextualized curriculum. So there's a couple of iLearn modules, and I want to mention that first one is incorporate contextualized math into the classroom. If you are teaching math and you have not looked up this resource, go there. It's really helpful because we had a math instructor in the state of Illinois who created, there are some for healthcare, there's some for TDL, transportation distribution logistics, and for manufacturing, and you don't have to be teaching any of those specifically to use these math lessons. They're just good, nice math lessons that you can use in your classroom. So if you're looking for something new, that's there. There's one iLearn model on advanced integrated and contextualized instruction. If you want to learn more and figure out what you really need to be doing, that's available for you. The Career Pathways Basic Skills Curriculum, I mentioned that. That is, as we created in the state, and I'll skip down, I'll come back to it, the statewide bridge curricula links for healthcare, manufacturing, and TDL. We had, well, the feedback we got from the field was that's great, but students don't always know enough to know what they want. So the Career Pathways Basic Skills Curriculum teaches basic level. It's like a 5 to about an 8th grade level, and so but it gives a great smorgasbord. Bevan said the word foundation. I'm saying it's a smorgasbord because you get to try everything. You know how you don't have to deep dive, but you just find out a little bit of information. So that's available. All of these curricula also, you don't have to use all of it. You can just go use one lesson if you want, or one resource if you want. And then there's also contextualized support courses for ICAPS models 1 and 2. So that's another resource for you. Okay, any comments or questions before we move on to integrated instruction and kind of the difference between contextualized curriculum and integrated instruction? Let me check my technology and make sure there's no hands raised. All right, we're moving on then. So integrated instruction. Is there anybody out there who's teaching in an ICAPS, an integrated program, who wants to share kind of what they might be doing in their integrated program? And if you don't, my second question is, what is anybody at a program where they do have integrated instruction? What do you know about it? What do you think integrated instruction is in comparison to contextualized? With the WIOA, there's a lot of emphasis on IET, integrated education and training programs. Okay, I'm not getting a whole lot. So let's move on and let me tell you about it. That doesn't mean if you're typing that you should stop typing. We'll circle the wagons on back. Okay, so there's 2 forms of contextualization, and this comes from Dolores Perrin at the Community College Research Center. We've been using this in trying to share transition programs since early inception. So we thank Dr. Perrin for her work. But there's contextualized instruction and integrated instruction. And they do somewhat the same thing. They both create a direct connection between basic skills and a subject area, such as, you know, I mentioned welding, a CNC operator, manufacturing. It can be a little more broad-based, okay? So the differences between the two is who is the primary focus of instruction, who does that teaching, the nature of the contextualization, and the challenges, because there's unique challenges for each of them. So let me go through that for you. So in contextualized basic skills instruction, and that would be probably in Illinois, more of our bridge programs, the focus of instruction is that we're focusing on making sure that our students have basic reading, writing, or math skills. And who does that teaching? It's our adult ed teachers. Or sometimes in some of the models it can be a college developmental ed instructor. But probably in most of the models in our state it would be you guys that are out there, or your teachers that are out there. So and we want to make sure as we're moving in with the WIOA that people understand that that's everybody can be contextualizing. And we were just kind of talking about how do you take everything and make sure there is some type of emphasis on the world of work. And so everybody can be doing that. So the nature of the contextualization is authentic content is the context for basic reading, writing, or math instructional. So there's a conventional set of basic skills. So we've always been teaching reading, writing, and math, right? So the difference is there's a context and application. And so the cool thing about this is, if you've been teaching adult ed for very long, you know that our students, and I'm not just saying this, but you hopefully have seen it, and there's adult learning theory that backs up this, there's research, that our students are going to have a deeper understanding and retain it if they get the application, if they understand, how am I going to use this, how is it going to be applied, and they see it and they do it and they try it out. So that's contextualization. And a lot of adult ed instructors have been contextualizing because they know that that's good for instruction, it's good for learning. So I would implore you to make sure that all of your teachers are doing it all the time. So the challenge of this is, if you're contextualizing to the world of work, is that not everybody wants to do the same thing. So you might have 20 students and everybody has a different career goal. So, and also the other challenge is sometimes our students feel very cautious about using content material because I'm not a welder. So I don't feel comfortable necessarily using that material because I don't have a very thorough foundational knowledge. Okay. So, and Rhonda Seraphin's asking, does this apply to ESL instruction as well? Yes, because in the new law, ESL is contextualized as well. Plus, I would contend that oftentimes our ESL students come with all of this background information, and if we give them, the more examples we give them, the more we contextualize, the more language awareness that we can give them, the more thorough their understanding is also. The more experiences we give someone, the more chance that they're gonna have that aha moment. Okay, so let's move on. That's contextualized. And then what's the difference between contextualized and integrated? And they're similar, but there are some pretty big differences as well. The primary focus of instruction is the content area. So it might be allied health, it might be auto mechanics or welding or sociology, biology or history. So now we're going to teach that. Focus area is going to be the content area. And who does that teaching? It's in Illinois, we would call that our CTE instructor. Dolores calls that the content area instructor, but it's our CTE instructor. And the nature of contextualization is that there's explicit instruction in strategies for reading, writing, and math as part of the content area instruction. So this teacher, and how it plays out in integrated programs, is there's a support course and there's an adult ed teacher who's, and that's what we call our team teaching group. So the allied health instructor is teaching the information in the allied health area, and the adult ed teacher is making sure that they understand how to take notes, how to study, how to make flashcards, how to take that test, and how to understand. They might give them another pass so they can get that vocabulary. That and what we found in Illinois with team teaching is oftentimes those students who are not part of our program, but maybe it's a cohort of both adult ed students and kind of our traditional community college students, is a lot of times those other students want to be a part of that as well because they like that support. So the challenge of this is sometimes those CTE instructors may not feel they have competence to teach basic skills. They know about welding, they know about CNC operators, but most of them have not had a background in the pedagogy, their andragogy. So they need the teaching, the art of teaching. And so that's why those successful team teachers in our state have really been able to help each other out, because the adult ed folks can say, hey, here's some teaching strategies. And the content area person goes, okay, here is the knowledge that we have. Okay, so what are some, oops, wait a minute, there's one more question or comment. Okay, so Jeff from SWIC, in my healthcare ICAPS program, we provide academic support to the students in order to help them pass the CNA class. We also provide employability skills training, inclusive of work behavior and habits, interpersonal communication, cooperation, job search activities, resume writing, mock interviews, etc. And they provide technology skills in the form of online applications, email, social media, very much. So, and Rhonda has a question then about, and Jeff, thank you for sharing. Rhonda has a question, does team teaching require both teachers to be in the classroom simultaneously. So in our models, when we were originally doing this as part, we meaning the state of Illinois, as part of Accelerating Opportunity, it was a 50% overlap. So teachers were in, the adult ed teacher was in, and then oftentimes that support class happened directly after the content instruction. And now we have a couple of different models in the state, and we're looking at probably a 25 to 50% overlap. And I will mention, because it's not up here on the screen, but I'm realizing now, since you're asking about this, Rhonda, probably other people are wondering also, is there is some training on the iLearn for team teachers, and there's best practices for team teachers, and that is the first resource there. I mentioned the ICAP's website, and there's a team teachers menu of resources, and there's different videos that we've made capturing successful team teachers across the state. And if you want to share, these are great for helping your teachers to understand initially, or if there's board members or community members that you need to share what is this model, those are great promotional information. There's also going to be a Transitions Academy November 8th and 9th in Effingham. There's a Transitions blog. If you don't currently subscribe to that, there's information about what's coming up new with training and kind of new resources, that type of thing. And then also the Transition newsletter that happens 3 times a year. So if you want to go back and take a look at any of those being archived, those are there as well. So that's some different resources that are there for you. And there was one other resource that I didn't mention, and that is oh, no, okay, I'm sorry, we did talk about that one. Okay, so in kind of figuring out, we're going to wrap up here because it's about time to wrap up. Hopefully we've given you some ideas, broadened some horizons. Thanks to everybody across the state who's sharing the great things that they're doing. Put my plug in one more time. If you're doing something, please let me know. My email is going to be coming up in 2 more slides, and I'd love to be able to capture that and share it for the state. Nobody should be starting from square one, like I said before. And Dina's wanting some additional details on the Transitions Academy. There's going to be more coming out very soon.
The agenda is being put together as we speak.
Yeah, so Dina, they'll be coming out to everybody in adult education very soon. So that'll be coming. So that's a great, thank you for asking about that. So my last question to you, and then you're going to have a time to ask more questions if you want to, is what are you going to do next? If you're a director, how are you going to take this to your teachers and make sure that they are doing all that they can to help our students to be successful, and by doing that, fulfilling the requirements that the feds have of us at the state level? And then what resource are you going to check out? So let's see, we can put that in. Okay, if you could type in, what are you going to do next? One thing. Don't make this hard, just one thing, or one resource that you're going to use. And if you'd love to talk, you can raise your hand and we can unmute you. Well, we can mute you again, just know that. So if you decide to go rogue, what's one thing that you're going to do? Okay, we're going to explore how we can begin to have an ICAPS Model 2 program. Thank you, Rhonda. Great. And they'll check out the resources given today. Good to hear that. And Christina says, check out more iLearn lessons. You guys, there's a ton of them there. And if you need access to them, we'll love to send that. Pamela, looking forward to utilizing the healthcare resources you provided. Amber, look at the iLearn contextualized math into classroom resources. And before I read any more, let me just say, you guys, because I love when this happens, with our original contextualized curricula in the state, what happened is, you know how teachers take things and they tweak them and they make them their own and they add to them and make them better. So if you have additional pieces, if you've started with something that we've mentioned here and you have additional pieces, we'd love to add to that. And the teachers in this state would love for you to share it. So please do that. Jeff says, downloaded the technology checklist. He's already done it. Love that efficiency, and that's what technology does for us, is that, you know, while you're on, you can, you know, do that, and there's going to begin to use it. Rhonda says that she's going to make some resources available to ESL teachers. Thank you, Rhonda and Cassie, for doing that. Barb Daly says she's going to check out more iLearn lessons, too. Dina says, We'll be giving certificate of participation, and they're going to share this webinar and the instructional staff. So let me answer that in two different ways. One is, if you need a certificate for today and you attended this webinar, you can email me directly after this and I'll make sure you get one. If you're doing something with your teachers, and I know a couple of directors have told me that they're going to use this and you're going to have staff development day, then email me and we can talk about how we can make sure that that counts for you. Okay? And then Heather, I definitely need to push for basic work skills. Be on time to class, yes, not bringing their phone and their language in the classroom. And you know, Heather, the great thing about this is it's not just I'm a crazy teacher and I want you to, you know, to like have decorum in classroom. It's like, hey guys, this is the world of work and this is the expectation and I want you to be successful. Because I want you to be successful, I'm going to help you practice those same employability skills in my classroom now. And Heather also says she's going to look for more math through iLearn. Sarah says she's going to share the information with all instructors, and Rhonda says will we be able to print out these slides? Yes, once we post them, you will be able to, and that will be in a PDF, and that, Rhonda. And Rhonda, if you can't wait until tomorrow, and I'm saying this I'm not being facetious here. Let me email me, and I'll make sure you get it sooner. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for sharing what you're going to check out next.
We want to give you an opportunity if you have any questions or comments at this time before we go on to give you for additional contact information. So if anyone has any questions or comments at this time, it would be a great time. I know you've already been asking some questions, but as we've gone along. But if there's anything that you want to question or comment at this point in time, please raise your hand or type it into the chat box.
And you still can ask questions, but I'm going to go on to this last slide with the contact information in case you want to write that down while people are putting their questions in. That gives you an opportunity. Those multitaskers that we know are out there, here's the resource information, contact information.
I'd like to thank Jamil Steele for taking his time out of his busy schedule to be with us today on this webinar. And we're looking at questions. How does integrated instruction work in small programs? Esther, I would say that in small programs for an integrated instruction model, you would be looking more toward an ICAPS 2 model. If you want to get in touch with me, I'd be happy to talk with you in greater depth about that. But how it works is that we're asking, number one, is that you can provide or make a connection to other programs, other CBOs, or other community college within your area to actually provide an integrated model to ICAPS program. And so there are some CBOs that are working jointly to actually provide integrated instruction, because some programs have training things available, such as I would give Bob Fitton as an example, that has the forklift certification program. And if you can connect with other CBOs within your area or with the community college to provide that ICAPS model too, that would be how that would work in a small program. But like I said, if you want to talk in greater depth, I'd be happy to talk with you. Any other questions or comments? Again, I'd like to thank Jamil, and we thank all of you for participating in today's webinar. We hope that you have gained some information about WIOA and how it should and will impact your classroom instruction. We have a question. Could you remind us of the site to access the slides tomorrow?
You know what, I'll put it in the chat.
Sarah will put it in the chat box for everyone so that you can see it. It will be
Amy or Casey, could you put in your website as I'm putting in ours so that they have a couple of resources?
It will be on the iLearn website tomorrow, as well as the ICSPS website. It will be archived there tomorrow. Sarah just put in the iLearn.
Oops, I think, hold on.
What?
I'm going to send it again because it didn't go to everybody.
Okay.
Let's try that. A little technology. Let's try it again. So also, if you go to the SIPDC website, it gives you links to all kinds of different, Sue and Laura mentioned the ALRC, so there's a link to the ALRC website from our website as well. And then Casey, thank you, just put in the ICSPS. That's our partners, and we want to thank them also for giving us this platform, a larger platform, so we could have more people attend today. Amy Julian, the director, and Casey Anderson from the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support.
Thank you all. Have a good day.